The Valsalva manoeuvre is performed by giving off quite a forceful exhalation against a closed airway. You can usually do this by closing your mouth, pinching your nose shut while expelling air out as if blowing up a balloon. This manoeuvre can be used to help balance the air pressure in your ears, but can also cause several rapid changes in your heart rate and blood pressure. It increases pressure in the chest, which will, therefore, affect the blood pressure and heart rate, and the venous return, which goes with the heart rate. This can be used in resistance sporting activities such as body weighters, which lift up weights. They may use the manoeuvre when lifting the weights to balance their air pressure, which therefore will cause tension in their thoracic cavity and change their heart rate and blood pressure to what is suitable and ideal. The Hering-Brewer inflation reflex is a reflex which is triggered in order to prevent the overinflation of the lungs, which is very important in not only just respiration levels but the human health as a whole. Pulmonary stretch receptors present on the wall of the bronchi and bronchioles of the airways. They respond to exercise stretching, excessive stretching of the lung during large inspirations, preventing the overstretch, which would not allow to return to usual, which would be unideal. The expiration control center has the main functions to send signals to the muscles that have control respiration to cause breathing to occur. The main respiratory control centers are typically found in the pons and the medulla of the brain, which generate the basic pattern of inspiratory activity. Most sports which are performed for a longer amount of time, such as cross-country and marathons, require oxygen to make energy, which can be generated due to aerobic respiration. Exercises in which aerobic respiration are used are, like I said, marathon running and cross-country and swimming for long distances. And it's a continuous training which uses the method of aerobic training. Respiration that occurs with no oxygen present converts glucose to energy, and then it builds up lactic acid, which is usually the anaerobic system. Pulmonary ventilation increases because of a rise in tidal volume and respiratory rate to meet increased oxygen demands. The average ventilation values for both tests are around 60 due to the exercise effect on the tidal volume and breathing rate, as they do increase due to the demand for oxygen to the muscles and around the body. Now on to cardiac dynamics. The cardiac system's response to warm-up is that the heart begins to contract faster, which is a systolic action in order for the heart to be pumping more blood efficiently and allow oxygen flow to start around the body and oxygen delivery to start. Similarly, there'll be an increase in the heart rate due to the anticipatory rise, which causes a release of adrenaline, which does have the effect of increasing the heart rate. Due to the fight or flight reaction, the heart will begin to pump more blood around the body to increase oxygen disposal to the muscles. As seen in the graph on the top left, there is already an increase in heart rate before the exercise actually starts and at rest, and this can be due to the anticipatory rise and adrenaline levels increasing the heart rate. In cardiac dynamics, there is an equation which links cardiac output to heart rate and stroke volume in the Q equals HR and SV. Each of these features are linked in some way, and if one factor is affected, the overall cardiac dynamic is affected. Cardiac output is the product which is made due to the heart rate and stroke volume. The average value for the cardiac output from the heart is around 4 to 8 litres per minute. Heart rate is one of the factors which contributes to cardiac output. It's known as the pulse, which you can sometimes feel when you press on an artery. this is it's the heart contracting, and the number of times a person's heart beats per minute is the heart rate. This rate can be affected by exercise, as your body is in a higher demand for oxygen, which forces the heart to beat more per minute. The normal heart rate varies in each person, but a normal range for adults is around 60 to 100 beats per minute. Finally, stroke volume is the amount and volume of blood in which is pumped from the left ventricle on average per beat. Therefore, the stroke volume and heart rate are linked, because the stroke volume, which is the amount of blood, has to be rejected and moved due to a pulse. With the experiments we participated in, the heart rate was one of the factors which were measured. For the multi-stage fitness, post and resting levels before the test shows that the average heart rate recorded was 87 beats per minute. This at resting level is a normal amount, because the body isn't demanding a larger supply of oxygen due to the lack of need for energy in the muscles. The heart doesn't have to beat any faster in order to pump a higher rate of oxygen around, and the blood combined to the oxygen is known as oxyhemoglobin. The fact that the resting post-test level with the same value might suggest that there was no effect from the pre-exercise anxiety and the heart rate build-up, which is commonly present. However, the results might be initially high already, because when being measured for a resting level, the strange situation of being tested itself could cause a response in heart rate and anxiety. This might not reflect a realistic resting heart rate due to the slightly anxious and apprehensive nature in which will range the heart rate. However, clearly on the graph there is a rise in heart rate for the person as the exercise begins. Heart rate has an increase in response to exercise, because the heart will need to convert its rate from a slow one at resting to meet the demand for the body for more oxygen. So the heart suddenly needs to increase its rate, rate fast and rapid in order to pump the blood carrying oxygen for it to diffuse to the muscles, which are in need for ATP production. Seen in this graph, it's clear for each stage of the exercise that it does cause an increase in heart rate, and this can be explained by the demand for more oxygen to the muscles as they convert into anaerobic respiration. There will be the need to replace the loss of oxygen. Post-test is also showing a high heart rate, because the heart needs to pump the blood similarly as fast to remove the lactic acid which is built up due to anaerobic respiration conversion. Due to the increase in heart rate due to exercise, this will change the overall cardiac output. The tidal volume will have changed also to match the increased need for oxygen, which therefore will cause the overall increase in cardiac output. In maximum exercise, such as a marathon, it will require the heart to pump at a faster rate for a longer amount of time, therefore supplying oxygen to the muscles the whole time. However, for shot put, which is a short and fast action sport, the oxygen will be aerobic, and so therefore will only need a fast, sharp amount of energy to be produced. Similar results were provided from the Wingate test, which showed that there was an increase in heart rate during and after exercise, which provides evidence for the fact that exercise does cause an increase in heart rate. During exercise, the cardiac output increases more than the total resistance decreases. So that means that the arterial pressure usually increases by a small amount. The cardiac output increase is due to the large increase in heart rate and a small increase in stroke volume. The As seen for the graph on the top right, it shows the different amount of pulmonary ventilation, which is kind of the heart rate output of blood, and oxidation in the different levels of exercise. So for light exercise such as brisk walking, there is a small amount low cardiac output, and then this increases with like different intensities of exercise, such as moderate being swimming and cycling at a good pace but not too demanding, and then heavy being sprinting, which gradually builds up and then it reduces at a slower rate. Even for our heart rate graph, even after exercise, which is stage 6, it shows that the heart rate level is extremely high also, and this is important because it has to remain high in order to keep the blood pumping around, in order to remove excess waste products such as carbon dioxide and lactic acid from the muscles and the internal body. In the body, the arteries carry the blood away from the heart. As the blood travels through the arteries, its pressure against the walls cause blood pressure. This measures how hard the blood is pushing against the walls of the arteries when the blood is being pumped through the body. The systolic pressure is the top number, which shows the amount of pressure in your arteries during the contraction of your heart muscle. And in contrast, the diastolic is the bottom number, which refers to the blood pressure when your heart muscle is between beat and relaxed, not contract like systolic. The systolic pressure, which is when the heart contracts, will increase during exercise because there is a higher demand for oxygen to be delivered to the muscles. So therefore, the blood needs to be pumped faster, which means that more contraction of the heart is needed to eject the blood over relaxation of the muscles. So therefore, during exercise, there is more blood being pumped, and so the blood pressure increases because of the harder push of blood against the artery walls, and it being rapidly pumped through. In order to work out the total blood pressure, you would work out you would time the cardiac output by the resistance to flow. This equation is known as BP equals Q times RF. There are resistance factors for blood pressure in the body, which include viscosity, vessel length, and vessel diameter. With the thinner, smaller vessel's diameter, there is a smaller surface area for movement, and this causes more of a push of the blood against the walls of these vessels because there is less room for the blood, and especially during exercise. During systolic pressure, there will be a pulse of movement of the blood at higher pressure, which will cause the higher blood pressure to be added to the vessel walls as it is smaller and there's a higher amount of it. The pressure in the arteries is incredibly high, and this is an example of a vessel which has a small diameter, and one reason the pressure within is so high is because of the small centre lumen, which causes the push against the wall to be greater and even higher. Viscosity describes the internal friction of a moving fluid, which in the body is the blood. The fluid with large viscosity resists motion because its molecular makeup gives it a lot of internal friction. After exercise, viscosity is seen to increase significantly and after and subsequently return to the baseline levels within 1 hour after exercise. The whole blood viscosity is increased by a smaller degree after heavy or light exercise.